Heroes started popping up all over the place with abilities way beyond human. But right alongside them came villains, dead set on wiping the world out. One of those bad guys just ambushed civilians in the capital city, and the hero who showed up to help decided to unleash a fiery attack. The villain went flying when that massive ball of fire knocked him off his feet. The cheering crowd of citizens thanked their masked savior like crazy. What's more, the news report from the scene was the top story everywhere. Tons of people were blown away by the hero's power, but some were seriously jealous. After seeing the news, one young dude thought the hero looked familiar. He glanced over at his drunk buddy, trying to compare their chins. My buddy woke up Kim Sunwoo, who was trashed, and joked he looked just like the savior. Sunwoo groaned that, drunk as he was, he couldn't even save himself. Suddenly, a message popped up on the dude's phone about an urgent meetup. The student left his friends at the table and casually headed to the bathroom. Pushing through the crowd of drunk onlookers, he managed to catch the news. The reporter was saying the hero who saved everyone vanished before the cameras arrived. The guy checked the bathroom to make sure no one else was there. Once he was sure it was safe, he locked the bathroom door. Sunwoo made a call and let them know he'd arrived. The bathroom window swung open, and the hero who just saved the city climbed through. Dude reminded the hero he shouldn't take off his helmet in public or he'd get recognized. But the savior just laughed and unbuckled the helmet from his suit. Turns out it was Sunwoo's twin under there, complaining about how hot the suit was. The hero changed into the same clothes as his buddy and claimed showing some face just made him more mysterious. Actually, the hero was the real Sunwoo, and he demanded the double transform back. The guy was freaked out by the thought of having his own clone. The fake Sunwoo was some guy named Lee Ju-won. He had this blue lightning technique that his body generated. Sunwoo had seen the guy transform a bunch of times, but it was always a nasty sight. Ju-won finished his copying technique and just turned back into a regular dude. Out of nowhere, Sonu grabs his buddy by the face, demanding answers. 'Cause he swears the kid was totally hooking up with some hottie. The guys crack up, joking that with Sonu's face, they could bag any girl. Sonu hits him up for the cash for that suit and asks his friend to watch his stuff. And without wasting a second, the dude's back with his crew at the bar. Ju-won just can't figure out how he can be a hero, acting like such a punk. But after throwing his gear in a bag and slapping on a cap to hide his face, the guy heads home, stoked because he actually made some decent scratch today. Even though he's a master of disguise, he just can't seem to become a hero. So his job is keeping the real heroes alive, but behind the scenes. Dude's using cloning tech to impersonate people, straight up stealing their lives. 20 years back, superpowered peeps started popping up worldwide and everything went to hell. These special guys immediately started using their powers to screw over regular folks. The cops fought back as best they could, but superpowers? Totally unpredictable. That's when real villains started showing up, lashing out at the world for screwing them over. Cops were freaking out. Their bullets couldn't even scratch these superhumans. And those guys just got angrier and angrier, wrecking like half the planet. Nobody could stand up to these villains or even put up a decent fight back then. So the government freaked and rushed through some new laws, ASAP. That's how we ended up with two factions of superpowered people, heroes and villains. The villains didn't play by the rules, and eventually they set up a headquarters. This blue-haired dude, Nemesis, became the head of their alliance and trashed all the dumb laws. The guy was sure no cop would dare come into their lair to make an arrest. Plus, even with laws, the world was still a mess, so Nemesis figured he was king. The villain's party got crashed by an explosion and a hero showing up in the window hole. The destroyers mocked the latex-wearing stranger, calling his costume totally lame. But the hero declared he was there to punish Nemesis for his evil deeds, according to the law. A split second of silence was followed by the villain's booming laughter. The guy went ballistic and, using his powers, activated his devil face. And with his crew cheering him on, he started swinging his claws around. That's when he charged the stranger, crackling with violet fire. Our hero took a fighting stance, channeling all his power into his fist. And with a savage punch, he nailed Nemesis right in the gut. The villain went flying into the wall, demolishing the whole room on the way. He'd never faced a hero this strong before and was totally freaking out. The big guy walked up to his enemy and announced his name was Justice, and he was there to serve it. From that day on, Justice became the most popular superhero and started a whole new alliance. Ju-won had the power of copying, but it wasn't helping him beat the bad guys. The dude went back to his apartment, which was a total disaster zone as usual. He checked his calendar. He had a ton of superhero stand-in gigs lined up for the next month. Of course, he's operating illegally, offering cloning services. But hey, it makes him good money, and the heroes themselves are begging for help. Ju-won flopped onto his bed, daydreaming about retiring in like 30 years. But his chill time got cut short by some furious pounding on his apartment door, even though it's super late. Yawning, the dude shuffled over to see who fate had sent his way. He cracked the door open a sliver, not wanting to let a stranger inside. And he shrunk back when he saw Justice standing right there. The superhero announced he was there for Lee Ju-won. As soon as the kid heard his name, he wanted to slam the door shut. But the guy threw it open and announced he knew about the illegal cloning that heroes were ordering. The kid tried to bolt through the window but froze when he heard Justice's request. Ju-won pressed him, asking why the Hero Alliance leader needed a body double. But the guy just told him to cut the personal questions and whipped out a briefcase with his file. The kid pulled out a few files, just general info about the hero. But he couldn't clone someone without knowing exactly what they looked like. Justice gave in and ripped the mask right off his face. Ju-won felt super awkward in front of the great savior, but agreed to start work first thing in the morning. As he left, the guy handed him a business card and told him to show up at the address. And then the hero jumped out the window, not giving the kid any time to ask questions. The kid scanned the street, but all he saw were the streetlights. Nothing else. After checking out the card, Ju-won decided he'd take them up on their offer. The Hero Alliance HQ was smack dab in the middle of downtown. The kid was blown away that a building that massive could even exist. He double-checked the address on the card, then his location, just to be sure. Justice was the kind of guy who'd throw himself in front of a bullet for anyone. But unlike Justice, Ju-won was a total egomaniac and kinda a chicken. So he couldn't figure out why Justice needed him, but he'd do anything for cash. When he got to the penthouse, the kid saw the hero sitting there all alone. Ju-won pulled the documents out of his bag, ready to talk shop. But as he got closer, he saw it, and realized the hero was covered in blood. The kid jumped back, not about to take the blame for murder. Ju-won freaked, staring down at the corpse of the strongest dude on Earth. After calming down, the kid thought to check for a pulse. But the second his fingertips touched the body, his ability kicked in. Blue lightning swirled around both bodies, scanning data for cloning. Ju-won couldn't pull his hand away, couldn't stop the process. Then, out of nowhere, the lightning released him and formed an energy ball. It exploded, throwing the bodies clear. The kid checked out his hand, seeing it start to glow. Then his fingers started to swell up, beginning the cloning process. The kid tried to stop the transformation, but his hand went totally numb. He felt these weird jolts going through his entire body. But it was different somehow, like he'd just drained Justice of all his power. Glancing at the dead hero, Ju-won decided to bail from the penthouse. Someone was probably watching him, so he took the stairs instead of the elevator. Busting through the crowd, the guy hurried towards the Hero Association. But in his rush, he accidentally knocked over someone's coffee. As he went to apologize, the kid recognized a familiar voice. Turns out he'd bumped into Sonu, who was pissed about his ruined shirt. Ju-won was stoked by his luck because Sonu was a real hero who could save him. Dude noticed his buddy acting super weird, though. Ju-won glanced at his hand, trying to hide the transformation. But his hand went back to normal. No more lightning bolts. Sunwoo snarked that his dirty shirt was worth a fortune. But some noise in the lobby cut his rant short. The guy threatened to make Ju-won pay for the dry cleaning big time. But this time, a nasty freaking tentacle stopped him mid-sentence. Thing came out of nowhere and impaled the superhero right in the gut. Sunwoo clutched his wound, quickly scanning around for the attacker. A mutant octopus showed up in the hallway looking to off the hero. The villain sneered, saying heroes were like worms corrupting the world. Ju-won froze, totally stunned. This was his first time facing a real villain. Then it hit him. Justice had been killed by a tentacle attack. Sonu was furious that the slime ball had blown his cover. The guy burst into flames and charged straight into the fight. The octopus managed to leap back from Fire's first strike. The villain was enjoying showing off the power of his tentacles. So he unleashed them on the hero in a lightning-fast strike. But Sonu waited for the right moment and incinerated the limbs with a blast of fire. The hero charged in, determined to take down the mutant in close combat. But he walked right into a trap, and a bunch of tentacles tied him up. More arms sprouted from behind the octopus, choking the life out of Fire. People panicked and ran for cover as their hero was getting strangled. Ju-won was stunned that some octopus was actually beating Sunwoo. But the villain just waved the hero's body around in front of everyone. Then he tossed Sunwoo's lifeless body into a corner like trash. Glancing at the civilians, the mutant decided to deal with them too. He unleashed his tentacles and started slaughtering everyone in sight. Ju-won freaked out and managed to hide behind the front desk. He hoped another hero would show up soon, but then he spotted a justice poster on the floor. The kid was listening to the prayers of people hoping the real protector of the world would come help. But Ju-won knew the hero leader wasn't coming, because his dead body was in the penthouse. Everyone in the lobby's gonna die just because they believed in heroes. Ju-won knew he was a coward and definitely not ready to fight that mutant. The guy pressed himself harder against the floor, hoping he wouldn't get spotted. But suddenly, over the screams, he heard a kid crying. Octo Freak noticed the little girl too and gave this nasty grin. The kid closed her eyes, scared stiff, just sitting there calling for her mom. Ju-won was yelling at the girl to run, to get to cover. The mutant went ballistic that someone might escape him and unleashed his tentacles. That sharp claw was coming right for the girl. She was frozen solid. The dude couldn't watch anymore, so he bolted out of cover. He charged at that tentacle, leaping over everything in his way. A split second before it struck, he managed to grab the thing. That's when his powers kicked in, and he transformed into Justice. Gripping the mutant's tentacles, the guy was ready to waste him right then and there. The strength in his hands was different. He ripped the mutant's limb right off. The bad guy stumbled back, trying to save his wounded tentacle. Ju-won didn't know what was happening, but since he was Justice, he declared he'd punish the monster according to the hero-villain code. Each enemy focused on the other, giving the civilians a chance to escape. Ju-won felt this overwhelming energy coursing through him, making him feel out of control. But today's the first showdown with the villain, and he doesn't know if he can pull out a win. The octopus thrashed its wounded tentacle around, spraying venom everywhere. And with that venom, it actually managed to regenerate the injured limb. After that, it decided to trap Justice, just like it did Fire. A dozen sharp spears came hurtling straight for the hero's chest. But Justice was surprised, because the octopus in front of him was moving in slow motion. Easily dodging the attack, Ju-won was blown away by the hero's abilities. Wasting no time, the guy nimbly dodged all the tentacles, and closing in on the octopus, he could easily strike. He wound up a haymaker, and bam, he clocked him good. That alien's power, it just shattered a bunch of bones in the octopus dude's face. Justice followed up, knocking the guy flat on his ass. Then, grabbing him by the tentacles again, he yanked him right back, and started swinging that octopus around like a freaking rag doll. Finally, he finished it off with a massive throw, slamming the villain into the wall. The thing coughed, all raspy, but couldn't even get off the ground. Ju-won was stoked. Justice's strength was seriously insane. Plus, this was the first time he'd beaten a bad guy and saved innocent people. Energy was surging through the guy's hand. Controlling other people's powers was tough. Girding himself, the octopus squeezed out of the hole in the wall. Without hesitation, he charged the hero again, hoping to catch him off guard. But Justice focused the power of lightning in his fist for a counterattack. Just then, his power drained away, and his arm started to weaken again. After that, the lightning energy left his body, stopping the fight short. The guy panicked, thinking his transformation was about to completely fizzle out, which meant he hadn't beaten the villain, and the crazy octopus would turn him into pulp. Because the octopus was still rushing him, even though its tentacles were getting weaker. But a sudden burst of laser fire slammed the monster into the ground, and the octopus was back under the rubble, right in front of a stunned Justice. A small squad of other superheroes showed up in the lobby. The girl who took down the octopus rushed straight in to hug Justice, but the dude backed away as she bragged about fate bringing them together. The girl was convinced the hero had distracted the villain on purpose, so she could neutralize him. Ju-won was just thinking how lucky he was to be alive, not about some random hottie. The stranger bombarded him with questions about how he got to the mission first. But the conversation got cut short by the rumble of rocks and the octopus leaping out of the rubble. In a flash, the girl activated her helmet with the laser vision, and with a powerful beam, she burned right through the villain, ending the fight. The babe was pissed that some slimeball dared to come after her Mr. Justice. But when she looked back at the guy, he'd vanished into thin air. No autograph again, but the captain ordered her assistant to follow procedure. 'Cause there were wounded people everywhere and they needed help ASAP. The heroes split up to rescue the villain's victims while the captain checked the hallway. She was blown away that Justice managed to survive and even fight. But suddenly, the captain heard a noise near the emergency exit and spotted a shadow. Ju-won was booking it out of the fight zone, hoping to stay alive. Too bad, he still ran right into the Alliance hero's line of sight. Late that night, the guy finally dragged himself home. He freaked out and started shredding the file the real Justice gave him. His hands were screaming after that fight, slowing him down. After finishing the paperwork, Ju-won bagged up the trash. He casually strolled down the stairs towards the alley. And without a second thought, he dumped the evidence in with the other trash bags. He covered his tracks, but now the kid didn't know what to do next. Justice is the #1 hero, which means that Octopus Guy's 10 times stronger. And the dude was so freaked out, he was worried someone saw his real face. Suddenly, an unfamiliar voice echoed from deep within the alley. Ju-won looked around. He was standing alone under the streetlight, but someone else was there. The terrifying voice announced it knew about ditching the evidence and fighting the octopus. It wasn't until now that the guy noticed his shadow was alive, and something was crawling out of it. His legs buckled and Ju-won hit the ground as he made out a figure in the shadow. The squad captain had followed him from headquarters, wanting to squeeze the truth out of the kid. The girl hovered in the air as she summoned clawed paws from the shadow, which snatched the trash bag full of evidence right out of the bin. The shadows ripped open the plastic and dumped the shredded papers onto the ground. Then, using the power of unity, the stranger pieced the documents back together. Ju-won was stunned, especially since he'd tried so hard to destroy the file. And now all the documents were right there in front of him, good as new. The captain quickly scanned the classified content. She was convinced the kid saw the real Justice die. So, summoning the shadows, she decided to get rid of the witness to her conspiracy. The dude got surrounded by shadows trying to grab him. But he jumped out of the trap, though he still took a hit from the shadows. Ju-won was sure this dark lady was seriously trying to kill him. Left with no choice, he summoned lightning, ready to transform into Justice. If this stranger was involved in the hero's death, he had to get revenge. The black goo was weightless, and the hero couldn't grab onto it. But the stranger's attack was like an octopus, so the kid decided to dodge. Halfway through, though, his body suddenly froze in midair, and he realized his leg hadn't cloned into Justice's. His powers didn't recover after the first fight, and the reverse transformation started. Ju-won's body weakened, so the hail of shadows attacked him. The girl was shocked. She hadn't encountered any copycats yet, but since some punk dared to impersonate Justice, she'd teach the little show-off a lesson. A thick fog rolled across the ground, summoned by the villain. The hero punched through the asphalt with his cloned hand. Then he ripped a rock out of the ground, ready to defend himself, because a black arrow was approaching him super fast. Holding up the rock, the kid barely stayed on his feet from the powerful impact. He managed to flip the arrow around without getting hurt. Ju-won lost it and charged the stranger in a rage. But the girl managed to surround herself with protective shadows, even though he was fast. So, when the dark lightning broke through her shield, he was ready to counterattack. But he missed and lost his focus. The villainess barely dodged, but her shadows couldn't help her now. So she had to backpedal from the copycat's furious attacks. While he had the strength, Ju-won wanted to wound her. But suddenly his body weakened again because he stepped into the lamplight where the shadows grabbed him. Like a black vine, they bound his body. He managed to shake off the clone, but it didn't exactly give him a power boost. The villainess hoisted him up and started choking the witness with a black vine. His pathetic struggles to break free were just feeding her pleasure. But then, a weird feeling about the imitator suddenly hit her. With a snap of her fingers, the shadows vanished, and the kid dropped to the ground. Ju-won didn't get the sudden generosity, especially when the villainess offered a deal. Grabbing the kid by the cheeks, the girl declared she saw potential in him. And since he had Justice's powers, he could keep playing superhero. Too much had happened in one day, but Ju-won couldn't believe he was going to be killing villains now. The captain had her doubts about her offer to the faker. But if word gets out that the great Justice died at the hands of a villain, the world's gonna freak out. That's why she figured the kid could buy her some time. The dude got pissed. If she wanted to use him, she shouldn't have tried to kill him. The girl introduced herself as Chrome, a hero who answered to Justice. Ju-won doubted her, but the captain suggested checking her credentials in the files. The faker started digging through the hero's notes, looking for Chrome's name. Turns out she was telling the truth, because he found a whole file on her. She confessed she only wanted to scare the con artist at first, so she proposed a deal. And to keep the kid from double-crossing her, Chrome promised to pay him 1 billion coins a month. For that kind of cash, the guy was down to pretend to be anyone. But he was sweating the fallout, because Justice's death was going to get out eventually. The captain promised him she'd have his back, offer him protection. They both knew Justice biting it would make the villains try to wreck the world, again. and the real heavy hitters would finally crawl out of the woodwork to build a new alliance, which meant a full-blown war between the heroes and the villains was coming. Lives ruined left and right, kids orphaned, and everyone losing hope for a better tomorrow. Chrome laid this choice for the future right at her new ally's feet. Ju-won remembered the fear in people's eyes during the octopus fight and didn't want to see innocent people die. But he's still no hero, and he can't control Justice's crazy power. Chrome figured the kid was chickening out and told him to keep this conversation zipped. The girl stepped out of the alley, but Ju-won's quiet voice stopped her in her tracks. The captain listened to the kid's whole spiel about how he was being offered a seriously dangerous gig. So he's only going to do it if she pays him 2 billion coins a month. Giving him a sweet smile, Chrome promised to give the imposter a hero experience like no other. A week went by after his chat with Chrome, and Ju-won was still poring over Justice's files. He'd memorized dozens of intel folders, and now he practically felt like he was Justice. He could now easily chat with any of the hero's acquaintances and not blow his cover. The apartment door swung open, and Chrome ordered him to follow her. The girl's car sped off onto the highway out of town. Ju-won decided to finish reading the file while they were on the road. The dude was sweating it, because on top of the villains, they'd be hiding the death from the Hero Alliance leaders too. But the girl was sure that info would screw the council, and there was a power struggle going on inside the Alliance itself. Ju-won was snapped out of his walk when he noticed a huge building. On the surface, it looked like a run-of-the-mill logistics center. Chrome moved down the halls until she got to a coded door. She flashed her hero ID and waited for the system to scan it. A security cam swung over to the newbie and snapped a pic. The metal doors swung open, letting the guests into the main hall. Ju-won was floored when he got a good look at the room. Turns out this place was the freaking Hero Alliance headquarters. This logistics center is supposed to be a warehouse, but it's really where heroes hang out. It's a home for those who can't hide their transformations, and low-ranking heroes too. Over time, the HQ became a hub for the everyday lives of superhumans. So many have been friends for years. Ju-won was blown away by the size of the Alliance and appreciated the little tour. But Chrome led him to a secluded office at the far end of the center. She reminded him that this first mission was just an intro. He just had to say hi to the council. The guy was stoked. Getting into this inner sanctum was a real privilege. The doors swung open, and he saw a massive table where the squad leaders were gathered. You could tell there was a rift in the council. Two groups sat facing off against each other. Even though everyone looked cheerful, one of the 4 squad leaders might know the truth about Justice. Hayes, Guardians number 2, didn't think the Alliance was to blame for the villain activity. But Dryom, the top dog on the Supers team, figured Guardian needed to step up their patrols. I mean, the villain activity's way low in everyone else's territory. Nah, she was against pointing fingers, saying the bad guys were just moving around the world. Nebelius, second in command of the Supers, backed the idea of cutting Guardian's funding. Arcadia chimed in all bored, reminding them they all get paid the same, even though he's like the strongest on Union. Ju-won just watched the meeting quietly, kinda bummed out. Zeus, head of El Condor, cut through the arguing and wanted to know where Justice was. Pandora, that cute one from his squad, complained that the big guy hadn't been seen for a week. The council started bickering again, but Hayes ordered everyone to have faith that Justice was still alive. The heroes started showing off their powers, challenging each other to fight. Then Bensi from the Union team shut everyone up because the girl was tired of hearing gossip about the leader's death at every meeting. But everyone was worried about Justice since he could be in trouble. The council turned its attention to Chrome and demanded an explanation. Before the girl could even make up a lie, Pandora announced she'd recently visited Justice's penthouse. When she got there, the apartment was empty. However, there were a ton of bloodstains all over the furniture in the living room. Chrome pointed out that visiting heroes' homes was against the law. But Zeus slammed his fist on the table and demanded that the assistant be honest with the council. The captain was pissed. Pandora could screw up their whole plan. Suddenly, the doors to the hall burst open, and Justice strode in all confident. Chrome noticed right away that the guy wasn't fully transformed. The hero walked up to the table and apologized to the leaders for being late. And he promised to answer all their questions about what went down in the penthouse. Ju-won knew if he kept quiet about what happened, they'd see right through him. But since he's the double, he's got to play his part perfectly. From the start of the meeting, the guy knew his job was going to be tougher than he thought. Watching the leaders from the hallway, he saw how much each of them wanted to be top dog. But then Pandora brought up the penthouse visit and the bloodbath, and all the council members started demanding answers from Chrome. And that's when the whispers started rippling through the crowd. Ju-won saw how close they were to blowing it and jumped in to help her, quick. No time for a backup plan, not with those blue lightning bolts crackling up his arms. So he transformed fast and confidently took his place at the head of the council table. Arcadia took his sudden appearance the calmest out of everyone. But Chrome was barely holding herself back from dragging the copycat back into the hallway. Because if this kid screws up even once, the whole world's going down the drain. Ju-won scanned the audience boxes, but he kept his cool. He'd spent the entire last week totally immersed in studying justice. The guy had watched hundreds of interviews to nail the hero's vibe. Stepping into the hall, he was dead certain his stride, voice, and usual poses were a carbon copy of justice. That's exactly how he managed to shut up every hero in the place just by showing up. Nebelia smirked and hinted that the whole council was scratching their heads about the leader's disappearance. Since everyone knew about the penthouse, Justice announced to the whole room that someone had tried to whack him. A fresh wave of gossip ripped through the crowd. Hayes jumped up from the table, begging the leader to trust her with news like that. But Justice declared grimly that he and Chrome had been forced to launch a secret investigation. And to keep things interesting, the guy decided not to spill the beans on the results. After that, he turned to Pandora, looking to get her to convince everyone there. The hero shot the cutie a furious glare and demanded she never break into his place again. The girl clutched the toy, totally freaked, saying she was worried about the hero. Justice got all dramatically pissed, because the council's gossip was going to make the investigation a nightmare. Pandora hugged the teddy bear and apologized for butting in. Ju-won felt like crap for talking to a kid like that, but he had to play the boss right now. Out of nowhere, Dream just blurts out that this whole story's a load of bull. Because, according to him, Justice could have staged the attack and they need an independent investigation. The hero was floored by the nerve, but he didn't get a chance to defend himself. Because Pandora jumped in to back him up, saying their leader's always on the level. The girl pointed out that her uncle Dream's too worried about people's fates, so he's not fighting evil enough. Zeus agreed with his assistant. Because they were willing to sacrifice a few lives for the greater good. So El Condor's saying Justice might have faked the hit to cover up some important mission. This dude knew family ties weren't strong with these leaders, but they're really down to ice any competition. Arkady tried to talk some sense into them, saying they still have stuff to discuss, and Justice can handle his own problems. The Superhuman and El Condor teams just scoffed, but they shut their traps. Guess that's Union's strength, always smoothing things over. Ju-won didn't get how it went down, but since he's not dead, guess he played his part okay. The partners left the logistics center in the leader's car. Ju-won was so wiped out after the transformation, he crashed out in the car. Suddenly, a soda can smacked into him, jolting him awake. Chrome gave the kid props for the job, but now they gotta be extra careful, because a lot of people are gunning for justice. Guardian Squad's all about protecting people. They put citizen safety first, no question. El Condor Squad? Those guys are trying to fry every villain they can get their hands on any way possible. Then you've got the Supermen who think they're hot stuff, demanding to be called the Chosen Ones. But Union Squad? They're just an alliance, and they're only looking out for themselves. Ju-won figured this whole hero thing was just a big political game. What he really wanted to know was what kind of hero Hayes actually was. Chrome pointed out that Hayes was Justice's subordinate and hadn't lost a fight as a hero. The dude thought about what she said, but still felt like he was being played. When he brought up the assassination attempt at the meeting, Hayes acted all surprised. But his double saw there wasn't a shred of concern for the leader's life in her eyes. Ju-won just admitted that because of his copycat technique, he's always feeling other people's moves. Chrome heard him out, but figures it's too early to jump to conclusions. Suddenly, the car swerved hard and the door flew open. She bailed out and pointed out that villains have been getting weaker ever since Justice showed up. And today, they'll witness the end of this dark age of evil firsthand. A brutal battle erupted over the old city, what the council's calling the root eradication. Chrome stated that every team in the Alliance is involved in this mission. And as a symbol of heroism, Justice needs to pitch in with the eradication too. She explained that this is just a small villain stronghold. All 4 council teams split up and attacked the city from different directions. Like the true hero he is, Justice has got to be the first one to Central Park. Ju-won was freaked. He wasn't ready to jump into the middle of a fight solo, but the captain hinted that she could easily slash his monthly pay if he didn't throw down. I mean, Justice is the #1 ranked hero, and missing this gig would blow their cover. Plus, if the copycat wants the big bucks, he's got to do more than just sweet-talk the council. After transforming into his hero form, the dude demanded a bonus. And without wasting any time, he bolted toward the city. Leaping off the cliff, he warned Chrome he expected to get paid by tonight. The old part of town was the villain's base, with fights breaking out everywhere you looked. Tons of high-ranking heroes were around, taking out enemies with a single punch. So Justice gets to the scene and man is he underwhelmed. Turns out there were way more heroes than villains. Then, out of nowhere, the penthouse babe who saved him shows up behind him. Guess she's a real fangirl, knowing about the assassination rumors. The girl joins him, promising to ice the traitor. Suddenly, this scorpion villain jumps out from behind our hero. And the hot chick's too slow to react and protect her idol. But Justice spins around and knocks the dude out with one punch. He barely used half his power, but even that was enough. The fangirl just stares, totally shocked at the defeated mutant. Before Justice could even bolt, she introduced herself as Max Ray. On the way to the park, the dude promised to sign an autograph later. On the road, tons of villains tried to take out our main guy. But this dude was a master at blocking blows, so he handled the low-level scrubs. In the alley, he ran into a flamethrower guy who spotted him. Justice slammed the asphalt and ripped up a chunk to use as a shield against the flames. Then, he just launched the slab right at the flamethrower dude. The defeated enemy wheezed, calling for backup. Suddenly, Juwon was hit with a flashback to his past, to when a villain attacked his little sister. He was powerless back then, and that thing devoured her. Little did he know, he'd be able to copy the abilities of the dead. He's needed Justice's power since day one, because with it, little Sona and his family would still be alive. Chrome's voice crackled in his earpiece and the memory faded. She reminded him not to waste time fighting and to get to the park. But Juwon was pumped up and bolted ahead to save innocent people. Closer to the park, the enemy had set up a ton of traps. But at super speed, the hero blasted right through the villain's ambush. The enemies cheered, because their boss was waiting at the end of the street, ready to take Justice down. Our hero kept hauling ass towards the park to finish the mission. But bam! A spear lands right in front of him, forcing him to stop. Out of the rubble emerges Kaiser, the villain who loves gladiator fights. But Juwon didn't know jack about famous villains. Still, Kaiser seemed stoked to meet the #1 ranked hero. Chrome reported that Kaiser just loves killing heroes for kicks. Right now, the villain's too strong for the doppelganger. He needs to bail. The guy figured he could outrun the guy with his super speed. Kaiser saw through the plan and threw up a barrier at the intersection. Then, quick as hell, he snatched the hero by the collar of his cloak, and with one smooth move, he slammed that guy right into the asphalt. Justice didn't even see it coming, but he's not getting away, not locked in Kaiser's arena. The hero felt heavy, like the villain's power was crushing him. Okay, if he can't max out his strength, he's still gotta fight. Charging lightning in his fist, the kid went right at the enemy. He managed to swing and hit Kaiser, but it wasn't enough juice. Because the dude blocked it, the barrier cut the damage. Then he started swinging that spear, trying to slice the hero up. The enemy was too fast. Justice just caught a blade to the shoulder. But Kaiser kept driving the hero closer and closer to the barrier. The villain lunged with his spear, but the guy managed to intercept it right by his gut. The enemy scoffed at the Alliance's best's pathetic attempts to beat him. And without even trying hard, he kicked the hero back into the barrier. Kaiser activated the barrier, absorbing some of Justice's power. Juwon could use his full power, but he risked transforming back into his old self. The villain was pissed that the legendary hero was acting like a weakling. He ignited his spear and charged at his opponent, wanting to pin him to the barrier. Kaiser managed to pierce Justice's shoulder, but the man remained calm. He deliberately let himself get wounded to trigger a surge of energy. The hero's power is like a glass of water, and the surge will empty it. Thing is, Justice's power level is like ocean size now. Juwon unlocked some kind of unlimited energy cheat code. He yoinked the spear right out of the bad guy's hand and clocked him in the jaw. The dude went down, out cold, but our hero was still juiced up. Hayes got back to headquarters from the mission, and she was freaking out. She had no clue why Justice was late getting his report in. Her assistant figured the hero might have run into Kaiser on the way, but Hayes was positive her leader wouldn't waste even a minute on that chump. That's why she decided to head into the city and find out what was up. Justice just stopped holding back and started wailing on the guy. Kaiser was hoping for an easy win, but he managed to scramble back to the barrier. To Zloya, it seemed like her opponent had become a completely different person. But every time the hero hit the villain, he had to hold back a little. That's why Kaiser was able to land counterattacks. Waiting for his chance, Justice dodged the spear and slammed his fist into the guy's ribs. The villain went ballistic and tried to activate the barrier's second layer. Energy surged across the asphalt. draining the hero's strength again. And when the kid attacked his enemy, his blows became super slow. Kaisar grabbed his spear and tried to impale his opponent again. But Justice's lightning-fast fist smashed right into the blade. And with earth-shattering power, the hero shattered the enemy's spear. The villain went flying, knocked out cold on the asphalt, and the barrier started to crumble. The foreign energy's influence vanished, and the guy felt his power surge back. He was staring death in the face, but Chrome bragged that he'd taken down the leader. His attention was drawn to explosions near the park, which were tearing up a building. Turns out a hero from the El Condor squad was fighting there. Justice knew that team was willing to sacrifice anything to kill a villain. Fire blazed across the sky again as another hero from the team showed up. But that ended up making the skyscraper next to the guy start collapsing. Now Justice hated El Condor because he was about to get crushed to death by debris. Gotta get out of here, but Kaiser's totally out cold. Part of him wanted to leave that scumbag to die, considering all the evil he's done. The skyscraper groaned ominously, then started collapsing for real. Justice was torn. Should he save this villain's life, or just leave him to his fate? Hell, Kaiser's been killing heroes left and right. But the doppelganger grabbed the enemy's body and bolted. The building was collapsing behind him, but he hoped this would somehow make Kaiser a better person. But it turned out the doppelganger ran into a dead end where the whole street started to crumble. He didn't have time to dodge before a huge concrete slab came crashing down on him. But then Chrome showed up out of nowhere, saving his life with her shadows that held back the debris. The girl flung the chunks of concrete aside. She promised to protect the kid after all. Justice chilled out. Too many close calls with death today. The captain was pissed that he'd risked his life for a villain so carelessly. Scooping up Kaiser's body, he said he was acting like some kind of saint. Suddenly, the villain woke up and charged Chrome with insane fury. And in a flash, he held a sharp blade to her throat. Kaiser started threatening to kill her unless his demands were met. Justice vowed to save his assistant and refused to risk her life. But she reminded him that Kaiser was the head honcho of the local villains. And if the hero let the enemy go, Justice's reputation would be toast. With so many lives on the line, the guy decided to do his duty and wouldn't let the villain leave the siege alive. The dude just laughed, like he's some wild animal ready to fight to the death. Next thing you know, Chrome sees the hero's silhouette flash right past him. Turns out Justice used his super speed to grab Kaisar and slam him into the wall. Juwon felt like he'd finally gotten revenge on the scumbag who killed his sister. Now the guy knew for sure that villains never change, and he's gotta deal with the fallout. Chrome dug his partner's dramatic speech, but it was time to get back to the mission. Shoving Kaisar's body aside, the guy rushed to finish the main objective. On behalf of the Guardian team, he announced their arrival at the destination. Juwon chuckled. Turns out earning 2 billion won wasn't exactly a cakewalk. Kaisar was a total psycho, but a pretty solid opponent, gotta give him that. Chrome noticed the doppelganger's progress. Looks like he mastered Justice's power. While the hero checked out the villain's body, she clocked his new abilities. She didn't see him as some money-grubbing kid anymore, not after he tried to save everyone. Juwon freaked out. After checking Kaiser's body, he realized the guy was a goner. Little did they know, they were being watched. Hayes finally made it to Central Park. She just got Justice's report, but she was pissed. Getting to the rooftop took a lot of effort and a whole lot of dead enemies. But watching the leader and Chrome, Hayes was convinced they were in cahoots. The partners kept patrolling, but Justice looked totally wiped. Even though he didn't transform back today, his body's beat. But the girl was stoked that the hero's power went to someone worthy. Juwon got suspicious though, because he wasn't expecting any praise. Out of nowhere, Chrome reminded him to try copying powers again. Maybe by touching the hero's dead body, the kid'll snag some new abilities? The Justice thing was a fluke, but now he's got his energy under control. Juwon crouched down next to the body and touched the warrior's palm. Pain shot through his whole body as lightning coursed through him. His head was spinning, but besides the energy reaction, he got nothing. For a sec, he felt a strange power in his hands. Then the process broke off. Chrome figured Juwon probably only has room for one ability, though Justice's powers might just be off the charts on their own. While they were talking, the partners reached the team's camp. When the door swung open, the dude was blown away by how these heroes chill. Turns out, every time Team Guardian wins, these warriors throw a massive feast. Lots of fun, beer flowing, and everyone's shouting with joy now that the leader's here. Justice was swarmed by heroes congratulating him on the victory. One of the sidekicks offered the leader a drink to celebrate with them. The double noticed that a lot of people on the team really respect the main hero. Grabbing a mug, Justice agreed to celebrate Guardian's win. The door to the room cracked open as the strangers eavesdropped on the conversation. Nobelius was pissed that some snot-nosed kids were worshipping Justice. The Overmen leaders were worried about how fast the hero's influence was growing. Dreyom hinted that he had a plan and they just needed to hang tight. In the meantime, nobody from the clan should draw attention from other teams. The next morning, in the main character's penthouse. At 7 a.m., the alarm clock blared relentlessly, making the guys smash it to pieces. Juwon was ready to die from this killer hangover. He was even cringing thinking about how the heroes partied last night. But still, he woke up in a pretty damn good spot. So, he's going to be living in Justice's penthouse now, playing the double. Juwon knew there's no way he could ever afford a place this swanky. But grinding as a hero, he figured the #1 spot earned him this. Checking his phone, the dude suddenly froze, because 2 billion won just landed in his bank account. He finally made it, no more ramen every freaking day. But he still couldn't shake the image of Justice's bloody body in that chair. The hero was murdered and he can't celebrate till he finds the killer. On the desk, he found the report from the secret autopsy. According to the findings, the hero showed no signs of struggling or fighting back. The guy looked up from his documents when someone knocked on the door. He figured it was Chrome and wanted to talk to her about the autopsy results. But he clammed up when he saw Hayes' blue hair in the hallway. The kid panicked and dove under the armchair, hoping nobody would find him. Still, no idea why Hayes just strolled into someone else's house like that. The girl scanned the living room and started calling for the boss. Her eyes landed on the armchair, which had started shaking like crazy. Turns out Justice was behind it, cranking out one-finger push-ups. The assistant was stoked that her leader was hitting the gym after the party. Juwon managed to hide the file and transform, but he had to ditch this girl. Hayes just dropped a bomb. She knows about the multiple attempts on the leader's life. Suddenly it clicks. That explains her weird behavior lately. She's sitting on a mountain of secrets. Before he could even ask, Hayes just straight up hugs him. She's bummed out, like seriously bummed, that her man kept this huge secret from her. Juwon's freaking out. All these hot women getting touchy-feely with him is too much. Hayes grips him tight and whispers to call her Yeonwoo when they're alone. This doppelganger's about to have a heart attack. He's stuck in a freaking romance plot. And she's not letting go anytime soon, holding him in a tight embrace. Juwon can't wrap his head around the fact that this knockout is dating the hero. The problem is, Justice's file doesn't have a single word about any relationship. Alright, so the hero hid this fact in his file, now the dude's gotta play it by ear. So this double straight up lied, saying they barely see each other privately, making it tough to use her first name. Hayes gave her leader a real suspicious once-over. Then she faked being hurt by how cold their relationship was. The guy didn't even clock that she pulled out her katana while they were talking and suddenly jumped him. Justice didn't expect the attack, so the blade left a cut on his neck. Hayes declared she wasn't going to be fooled again and demanded the truth. And just to drive the point home, she chopped up a few chairs with her katana. The girl promised that any lie would cost this imposter an arm. According to the file, Hayes and Justice have been on the Guardian team for ages. And after all that time, she finally became the second in command. Her main superpower? Super speed acceleration, she's a speedster. Justice freaked and bolted, trying to get away from that sharp blade. But his whole apartment, with all that fancy furniture, got sliced to pieces by her katana. Guess she didn't want to hurt the liar before she had to. Still, she could scare him to death and squeeze the truth out of him. The hero tried to stop her, throwing up a lightning-fast block. The shockwave sent both of them flying in opposite directions. Hayes was stunned that her double had managed to snag the leader's power. Juwon still got his arm, but only because of the energy surges. But he wasn't unscathed. His body was fighting to revert back to normal. The dude figured he needed to unload all this energy on Hayes. So he charged at her full speed, trying to knock her out cold. But the girl teleported super quick, and he totally whiffed. Hayes knew for sure this imposter could beat Kaiser, but this wasn't her Justice. Because the real hero could control the flow of power, not just blast it out in spurts. She could dodge all his attacks without even breaking a sweat. And Justice walked right into her trap when he caught a blade in his side. Hayes promised to chop the enemy into little pieces as soon as he ran out of gas. The traitor wasn't giving up, and the girl swung her sword with insane speed. That's why the blade pierced Justice's shoulder. The girl froze when the hero admitted she'd beaten him. But since she was standing still like that, he managed to grab her arm. And then he finally landed a punch, throwing her off balance. But the guy realized that wasn't enough to knock her out. Hayes gripped her katana again, her rage flooding the living room. Justice tried for a quick strike, but there was nothing there. And the next thing he knew, his back was slashed multiple times. The girl demanded he stop resisting and follow her orders, because the imposter is only delaying his own death by her blade. Hayes took to the skies, unleashing a rain of hundreds of brutal blows on the hero. At this rate, they're gonna turn him into mincemeat for real. And before the katana could slice off his arm, black shadows wrapped around the blade. Hayes tried to fight back, but the black goo had her tied up tight. Chrome calmed the battle with her shadows and promised to explain everything. Justice was saved, but he's definitely gonna need a raise for this crap. The girl went ballistic that Chrome was in on the whole conspiracy. The captain confessed that the real Justice was dead, murdered. Hearing the truth, Hayes was horrified that the hero's death had been desecrated with this circus of impersonation. A battered Juwon awkwardly admitted he wasn't a clown, but this was their plan all along. Chrome reminded everyone that the hero's death would have major consequences, and our little charade is barely holding things together. But Hayes shot back, saying she knew it was a scam from the jump, because the kid doesn't know jack about Justice's powers, and the truth will come out the second he throws a punch. While she was freaking out, Chrome was laser-focused on the plan. Juwon admitted that investigating the hero's death is only possible once the world's calmed down. But Hayes called her partners idiots, saying the killer could come back and off the body double. The guy was sure he was safe, because nobody knows Justice is dead. And he swore up and down that the hitman wouldn't be back to whack the hero again. Maybe Juwon's wrong, but he did pick up on something. Chrome demanded he spill the beans about his theory on the killer. The whole thing is, the council took out a ton of villains yesterday, but the public doesn't know. But Hayes was sure the merc was sharp enough to figure out the assassination attempt failed. Juwon wanted to argue, but the assistant already wrote him off as an idiot. She wasn't sure how long this charade would last, and she needed to figure out their odds. Even though the guy was convinced Hayes now hated his guts, Chrome calmed him down, saying the assistant was always loyal to Justice and would probably help them. And the girl knew that besides Hayes, nobody could keep the Guardian team in line, even though it pissed her off that these world-saving heroes were spoiled brats. Right now, the conspirators' main goal is to keep hope alive and keep the heroes in place. Juwon never understood why he got involved in this mess in the first place. He's gonna try harder now, convince everyone Justice is the real deal. But his pep talk didn't exactly land when Chrome got a message. All she did was tell the clone to get ready for Mission 2. Juwon found himself in the superhero mess hall for the first time, and he wasn't thrilled. 'Cause everyone at the tables around him was gossiping about his arrival. The guys shot the gossips a death glare, and they shut their traps. Chrome didn't give him any details, so he had no clue what he was supposed to do. She just ordered another round of food. They're just making a public appearance, trying to kill the rumors about him being dead. He got the point, but the clone wasn't really seeing why that meant hitting up the cafeteria. But Chrome just hinted there'd be some special competition today and pointed over to the corner. A crowd of low-ranking heroes was gathering there. Today, these rookies get to participate in the Alliance's main event. A fight will decide which team each newbie gets assigned to. This is a huge day for them, and Justice needs to be there to support them. But he wasn't exactly jumping at the chance to publicly brawl with villains. Finishing her dinner, the girl ordered the clone to follow her. Beyond the walls was a massive battle arena. Chrome snapped the kid back to reality and told him to keep it cool. Because while they were walking through the crowd, everyone was giving the hero the stink eye. Turns out he actually didn't have to do anything today. And the girl made it pretty clear they were just watching the selections. Even though Justice was totally sure he'd be thrown into some exhibition match, the captain shoved him towards the stands and ordered him to shut his mouth. The team leaders had already snagged the front row seats. Justice noticed the Supers and the Union had brought a ton of fighters. Chrome admitted that these days heroes are more interested in fame. Hayes marched onto the platform and went straight to her seat without saying hi. She told her accomplices that she hadn't picked a side yet. And just because she's playing along with their circus doesn't mean she likes the plan. The dude felt like crap that people still thought he iced the hero. The announcer's voice boomed across the arena, and all eyes snapped to the ring. Two fresh faces stepped onto the green platform. The announcer barked that the fight was between members of the Superhuman and Guardian teams. The fighters struck poses for their teams, soaking up the cheers. The gong rang, and the Guardian newbie was the first to throw a punch. But his opponent dodged the fist like it was nothing. Then he juiced up his cyber arm and blasted a whirlwind of energy at the guy. The dude went flying across the ring. He activated stone shields on his arms and got ready to rumble. but his opponent reloaded his hand for maximum damage. Then, using a shockwave, he blasted himself into the air. Chrome explained to the clone that these battles were just a show of force for the team leaders. Juwon figured it was all supposed to be like a friendly match, but she was amazed by his naivete, knowing how these fights usually ended. In the ring, the superhuman rookie pinned his opponent and tried to rip his arm off. Justice jumped up and demanded they stop the fight, but Chrome ordered him to sit down and chill. The clone objected, but she explained it was all within the alliance rules. And even Justice himself couldn't interfere in the duel. Juwon was at a loss. What was happening in that ring was straight-up torture. The rookie kept on breaking his opponent's arm, and before he snapped it clean off, someone finally put a stop to it. Neither Chrome nor Hayes were fast enough to stop the Justice clone. Juwon thought back to his little sister, who saw him as a hero. Back then, he didn't get why Sona wanted him to go to Atrium. They were a close family, and the little one was worried about his future. So he promised her he'd definitely take her with him to the selection trials. A lot had changed since that promise, but not Juwon's feelings for his sister, who believed that heroes were saviors and treated everyone the same. As Justice, he declared that a true hero wouldn't cripple another, because they're the people's hope for a peaceful future. The crowd's screams died down above the arena, and everyone waited for the showdown. But the rookie ordered the old guy to leave the ring and stop embarrassing his team. Justice demanded again that the punk stop crippling his teammates. The newbie said that empty words had no effect on him, and he was about to blast the hero with another surge from his hand. But Justice grabbed the device with all his might. The jerk had the power to drain other people's energy and was sure of victory. So he decided to blow up the Alliance's main hero right then and there. Justice squeezed the guy's wrist, breaking his arm before he could even attack. And he demanded the newbie tell him why he didn't just own up to his mistake. Drayom rushed into the ring, shoving the hero away from his fighter. Without a word of warning, the guy unleashed a power blast right at his opponent. Red mist just engulfed Justice's entire body. The stands erupted, totally hyped for a brawl between the strongest heroes. And in the team boxes, the audience started placing bets on who would win. Hayes was trying to shout at the clone, trying to call off the fight, but Chrome understood what his assistant was worried about. Right now, Juwon doesn't really know how to control Justice's power. The kid pissed off Drayom, and against him, he doesn't stand a chance. Drayom just said he's not backing down from this fight in front of the clan. Looks like Juwon's about to get a serious reality check. The clone let go of control and blue energy surrounded him. He charged in right away, hoping to catch him off guard. But Drayom effortlessly caught his fist right in front of his face. Suddenly, the enemy's red energy transferred to our hero's body. His power started draining away and Drayom went for the punch. Instinctively, the guy managed to block his ribs. He even tried to counter, but his hits were somehow weaker. Drayom brushed dust off his jacket and smirked. Then he started draining Justice of his power. The double landed on the ground, thinking the opponent was copying his fighting style. But he'd weakened, since some of his energy had transferred to Drayom's body. The guy was having a blast. Guess the top-ranked guy isn't so tough anymore. Red fury filled the arena when the other team's leader landed a blow. The crowd started whispering that Justice looked like a punching bag, but Chrome was hoping the kid had figured out what his opponent could do. Because right now, he looked like a rookie getting hammered by a pro. See, Drayom absorbs his opponent's power first, and then attacks with it, only amplified. Chrome was useless. Looks like she broke her promise. No matter how hard Justice hits, it ain't gonna hurt his opponent. Drayom just blurted out that he could take the #1 spot in the rankings right now. Boos were coming from all over the stands. At this rate, everyone's gonna realize Justice is a total fake. If Juwon had just followed Chrome's orders, everything would be fine. And now some unyielding geezer is gonna bring him shame. But our hero couldn't just sit back while these phony heroes bailed out their buddies right in front of him. When the two fighters clashed in a swirl of energy, the guy suddenly came up with a plan. Drayom was having a blast. Now this actually feels like a real fight. But somehow Justice's energy surged and started consuming his opponent. And that was the plan all along, because the main hero's power flow is stronger than Drayom's capabilities. The opponent was trapped in energy that was burning him from the inside out. The arena was a scorched field after the two powerful heroes unleashed their power. Smoke billowed over the stands as the energy collapsed. Chrome was surprised the kid was smart enough to figure out how to win. If the fight doesn't stop, their power will destroy the entire atrium building. Suddenly, the rivals were thrown apart by an outside force. Justice felt like his body was turning to stone from the weight. Their fight enraged Arkady, who intervened in the arena's destruction. Ju-won had no clue the Union leader was this strong. I mean, he can stop even the strongest heroes from moving. Arcadia dropped his spell, ordering the leaders to chill out. The crowd went wild cheering again, but the fighters calmed down. Justice did notice how pissed Dreom looked leaving the ring, though. The guy was sure Chrome was going to personally nail him on the way home. The Guardian heroes got on the ring, and the rookie thanked the boss for the help and promised to serve the team faithfully for a peaceful future. Ju-won tried to explain himself but didn't get the chance because his whole team started praising their leader. Even heroes from rival teams in the stands had to admit he was badass. The guy soaked it up. Hey, he survived. Might as well enjoy the glory. A few days later at Justice's penthouse, Hayes brought in the roster of new recruits joining the Alliance. Chrome pointed out that the recent brawl actually improved things in Guardian. But after the draft, most of the rookies jumped ship to Union and the Supers. Ju-won couldn't wrap his head around what the difference between the teams even was. Because Guardian's newbie got wrecked in the atrium, the team's rep took a hit. But with all the villain takedowns, not many heroes just want to protect the peace anymore. Hayes was convinced it was only a matter of time before the Supers took over everything. The guys figured this was going to blow up into a major problem. I mean, Dramoy and Nibelius are acting no better than straight-up villains. These superhumans are going to get dangerous, and Ju-won suggested we form our own alliance. Chrome knew that nobody but the Union team would even back that idea. Chances are, Arcadia's got plans to start an alliance of their own, too. And Ju-won was blown away by how easily this whole big deal was going down. Suddenly, he got an idea about how to reel in the Union. The dude dug up some info on his phone and asked the girls to give him a hand. On top of that, he'll get to work once he gets paid $2 billion. Late that night, a party kicked off in some penthouse. They invited some big-name DJs and a bunch of popular folks. And since the host requested it, a whole lot of hotties showed up too. Ju-won and Chrome were watching the party from the rooftop next door. Turns out Wilhelm, Union's number 3, was throwing this bash. Thing is, the Union rankings are based on popularity, not actual power. And because of these parties, Wilhelm's got connections with tons of heroes. Chrome found out the Union's holding a major vote tonight, but she doubted if that little punk could even pull off their plan. Okay, Ju-won didn't think their idea was exactly genius, but they needed something drastic. The guy scanned the crowd and spotted a model who caught his eye, so that's how they're gonna rig the team vote. The party was raging when more guests showed up. Someone in the crowd got hyped when they spotted Wilhelm. The guy cut through the crowd, flashing this killer smile. Then he snatched the mic from the host and greeted everyone, and wished all the heroes a good time after kicking evil's ass. Cheers erupted as the host promised even more fun. The music blew up on the rooftop as the heroes rushed to dance. Wilhelm left the stage, but promised he'd be back later. His assistant begged the hero to lay off the booze tonight, but the guy told his buddy to chill out, saying he's hot and should use it to his advantage. But before Wilhelm could even start complaining about someone else's good looks, bam! A model totally crashed into him and spilled her cocktail all over. The dude started yelling, saying he was the host and people needed to watch where they were going. But the second he saw the girl's figure, his heart was set on fire with love. He flashed a killer smile and promised to forgive all the trouble. But she said she wanted to make it up to him somewhere a little more private. Wilhelm was down for anything, 'cause babes like that are the absolute best. So, putting his arm around the girl, he headed inside the apartment. And as a final order, he told his assistant to keep things under control at the party. The guy couldn't argue with the hero, but something felt off. Wilhelm took the babe to his bedroom, away from all the noise. He was about to suggest a fun night, but got blindsided by a killer right hook. The hero went down, out cold on the floor, totally helpless to stop the invasion. Ju-won would never forget that transformation. But the important thing was he was in the bedroom. The guy quickly started searching for the tablet for the conference. The device had 5 security checks, but Ju-won managed to get through them all. And, transformed into Wilhelm, he joined the meeting. Arkady was surprised by his comrade's early visit, but still praised him for his responsible approach to their vote. The boss man said we gotta nail down these Guardian partnership plans today. The dude tallied the votes and announced it's all coming down to a simple majority. Then he cracked open the doc, where each hero's got their own voting power score. Ju-won was blown away that unions got popularity points, and you gotta spend them to sway elections. Chrome assured him that after wiping out the villains, the price of an opinion went way up. Arcadia announced that Wilhelm's vote is the one that's gonna make or break this deal. The heroes' plan choices started popping up in the chat. Notifications stopped, and Arcadia got down to counting the votes. but he was seriously shocked when he saw Wilhelm's pick. Ju-won was hoping his plan worked and the leader wouldn't pull any shady crap. Arkady said that since everyone agreed, he's down for the partnership. Meeting finally over, the doppelganger finally chilled out. Chrome had been waiting for him on the next rooftop for hours, and when the kid finally showed up, she was dying to know the results. The guy pretended to be all bummed out like the plan had flopped, but then he laughed and demanded $2 billion for the job. Wilhelm woke up the next morning with a killer headache. He complained that he'd really tied one on and couldn't remember squat, but he was sure that he'd had an unbelievably hot night with a babe and even voted. The assistant got suspicious when he heard about the online vote. Wilhelm waved him off, figuring he'd made that decision even before getting hot and heavy with that stranger. Now, though, he was dying to get her number and take her out. His assistant promised to get her digits, but was really trying to figure out which guest was the traitor. After all that superhero stuff, Ju-won was back at his old place. The guy opened his closet to pack up his things. He didn't have much, and he wasn't even sure what to grab. He's got to be Justice full-time for a while, so he's moving into the penthouse. Hayes wasn't happy with Chrome's plan, but couldn't talk anyone out of it. Now that he's got money, he decided to toss his old stuff. Digging through a pile of hoodies, he found a photo that brought back memories. He used to have a real family a long time ago. Ju-won's bummed. If Sona were alive, she'd be stoked about his transformation into Justice. Dude was gonna grab the photo, but he accidentally snapped the frame. Couldn't catch the picture, and it slid right under the bed. The kid squeezed under there, but the photo was stuck against the wall. So he tried to lift the bed, but with his hero strength, it went flying into the ceiling. Ju-won's jaw dropped. Guessing the landlord ain't giving back his security deposit after trashing the place. A couple hours later, the guy met up with Chrome in the penthouse. He told her that since this morning, he hasn't been able to control his powers. And grabbing a hand off the table, he crushed it with just one touch. So, the girl figures the doppelganger's getting sensitive to Justice's powers. And it looks like Ju-won's powers are starting to wake up right now. The more a guy uses his power, the faster it levels up, especially for newbies. But we gotta look into it. For now, the doppelganger's morphed into a hero. A video conference was set up among the team leaders. Arcadia kicked off this sudden meeting because of his business trip. Nebelia smirked. Because all these talks always boil down to dividing up hero duties. But the union leader declared he's ready to make an alliance with the Guardian. The council members didn't dig the offer, even if it's decided by a vote. Still, Arcadia confessed that his heroes see their mission as catching those remaining villains. The meeting got cut short by some zombie howling his lungs out. Then Zeus shows up, demanding the supers back their mission. The guy starts laying it on thick for the council, saying the last villain base raid was a total win. But Justice straight up says one base ain't wiping out evil, they gotta take down every single enemy crew. All the leaders called out Nobelius, thinking he's just being a selfish jerk. Finally, Dreom tells his aide to just suck it up and go with the union's decision. Because wiping out all the bad guys means they finally get some freaking peace. The meeting wraps, but Justice knows the supers are gonna be playing both sides. Back at Ju-won's apartment, Chrome notices this massive crack in the ceiling. The dude's embarrassed about the mess, but hey, at least he didn't bring the whole building down. After cleaning up the rubble from the ceiling, the kid promised to pay the landlady back. Ever since that first transformation, his body's been doing some freaky stuff. But what really bugged him was why Chrome was helping him screw over the heroes. The girl reminded him that heroes are unstable, and only Justice's reputation keeps them on the straight and narrow. Ju-won got this feeling there were personal reasons behind it, but Chrome just bounced. Now he felt like crap, thinking his words might have stung her. He wanted to chase after her, but decided to stop grilling her about their alliance. But up on the roof, they bumped into some dude. Ju-won instantly recognized Wilhelm's bodyguard, the one from the party. The stranger sized them up and immediately ID'd Chrome as one of the Guardians. She knew Stiletto, but never expected to run into him here of all places. And what's worse, the guard recognized Lee Ju-won and his cloning trick. Stiletto laughed as he cornered them, trapping them good. I mean, he knew damn well that bum Ju-won was at the party. Security footage shows the double morphing into that model. Then a couple hours later, the camera caught him sneaking out of the hotel. Ju-won was freaking out. He thought he'd covered his tracks. Playing dumb, he claimed he got wasted and turned into a girl, but once he met Wilhelm, he just couldn't resist. Stiletto was pissed and demanded to know why the double was pretending to be Justice. The partners were horrified that someone got so close to their secret. Suddenly, the guard just yanked a tooth right out of his mouth. That freaked out the other guys, but they didn't have time to run. 'Cause Stiletto chucked that tooth right at him. And mid-air, that thing started morphing into a net. Ju-won tried to save Chrome, but the trap already came down on her. That tooth turned into a bone dome, and no way you're punching through that. A bone shard popped out of Stiletto's hand, and he ordered the copy to spill the truth. Said he'd find out even if it cost him his life. Ju-won demanded he let his partner out of the trap. But Stiletto, waving his blade around, said he had other plans. Lately, he'd noticed Justice acting different. And even the council's assassination rumors left a lot of unanswered questions. So, the bodyguard figured the hero's assistant must have found him a double. Without hesitation, Stiletto lunged at the imposter. Ju-won dodged at the last second, but the bone still left a gash on his neck. The guy quickly jumped back, putting some distance between them. He couldn't transform into Justice right now, and it looked like none of Ju-won's accomplices were going to help him out. Stiletto announced their masquerade was easy to see through, but the enemy claimed that was a lie and activated a portion of his power. The guard was stunned for a second, crackling with blue energy. If this kid wants to fight, he's going to get a beatdown he won't forget before he dies. Ju-won figured his enemy might be Justice's killer. But he's gotta fight now, or he'll lose all his cash if the truth comes out. They clashed, but Stiletto saw the kid couldn't control his power, and he got pissed that such a great ability was wasted on an idiot. The double managed to dodge the follow-up attack, but Stiletto knocked him down and tried to skewer him with a spike. Ju-won kicked him away, though. Then he grabbed the guy's wrists, pushing him back. The guard was sure the doppelganger wasn't fighting at full power. Ju-won had no clue what kind of power awakening he was talking about, though. The dude implied that this awakening boosts his super strength stats, and you can only get that upgrade in rough conditions. Stiletto figured the kid was just wasting energy right now. Then, out of nowhere, even more sharp spikes popped out on the guy's elbows. His ability's bone mutation, and he almost sliced the kid's face with his elbows. The sharp bones snapped shut right above Ju-won's head. The doppelganger's plan was to pin his opponent against the wall, and when Stiletto froze up, he managed to grab him by the head. Ju-won tried to knee the guy's nose into next week, but got a bruise instead. Cause the dude used his own bones to make his face a freaking shield. He couldn't land a single hit on Stiletto. The kid was pissed, but he had to back off. Before, all he cared about was keeping the Justice copycat thing under wraps. And he wanted to get to the bottom of the hero's death, ASAP. But Ju-won hated himself for always being too weak to save the people he cared about. Now he's got a real superhero gift, but he's still acting like a chump. Stiletto suddenly popped up behind him, trying to get a rise out of him. But the hero just kept dodging the blows. Since he couldn't beat the guy, he figured he'd distract him. He zoomed past his opponent, faking a strike at top speed. But Stiletto was quick, intercepting the move and putting his blade to the guy's neck. Ju-won laughed, because he wasn't trying to hurt the enemy, just save his friend. Black vines appeared in the air, binding the guard tight. Chrome was clearly pissed and wanted answers from Stiletto by any means necessary. The guy tried to break free, but the vines just squeezed him harder. The girl shattered the bone trap with shadows, so it wouldn't get in the way of the fight. Even though Stiletto was restrained, his hand with the sharp spike was still free. He tried to slash the black vine with it, and he kept pushing the clone's buttons with jokes at the same time. Next thing you know, the vines loosened up and he broke free. He didn't hesitate. He charged those guys, ready to take them both out. Chrome summoned shadows, trying to turn them into tentacles. Shadow spears came flying straight at Stiletto, but the guy shot out spikes from his elbows to defend himself. After snapping off one of the spikes, the enemy chucked it at Chrome. The bone fragment whizzed past her face and smashed into the wall. She got distracted, and Stiletto took the chance to wound her. Using her shadows, Chrome slipped right past the enemy. After that, she managed to throw up a black dome and deflect the spikes. Ju-won was blown away. It was the first time he'd seen heroes fight at full power. He was especially impressed by Stiletto, who was super calculated in battle. Suddenly, the enemy pulled that tooth trick again. But this time, he launched a bunch of them at the girl. Bony nets started forming in the air again. Chrome wasn't going to fall for that trap twice, though. Summoning giant tentacles, she knocked the teeth off the roof. In a flash, Stiletto vanished from her sight. And at the last second, Chrome spotted his silhouette as the guy jumped her. She took a fighting stance, clenching a leash of shadows in her fist. Before Stiletto could skewer her with his spikes, she unleashed the stakes. But the guy managed to knee her in the gut. And he kept the pressure on, swinging those bone spikes around. Chrome hit the ground, and with her last bit of strength, she shot out spider legs. They didn't pierce Stiletto's chest, though. He managed to shield his heart with a ribcage armor. He slashed the bindings in two with his bone sword. Now the enemy forced Chrome to fight all out, and she summoned a shadow cobra. The creature shattered into a tsunami and tried to slam into Stiletto with a wave. The guy was thrown for a loop and froze in the face of the devilish maw of darkness. The trap slammed shut with a crash, and cracks started spiderwebbing across the ceiling. But as soon as the smoke cleared, their opponent emerged from the haze. Stiletto snuck up on Chrome, trying to kill her with that armored fist. Juwon was freaking out and charged in to save his friend. But right behind Stiletto, a hellish spear appeared, ready to deliver a one-hit kill. The rivals sized up the situation and decided to hold their fire. Chrome realized the guy hadn't been trying to kill them from the jump. Juwon was stunned. Guess he's still too green to get the players' motives. Chrome suggested they talk about working together going forward. Stiletto retracted all his spikes and agreed to negotiate. He said the council's convinced justice is dead. Then he pulled out a flash drive with a video of Juwon becoming a hero. Stiletto destroyed the device and implied that if the double's identity is revealed, he'll be branded a murderer. But Juwon didn't believe the guard would get rid of the evidence that easily. The guy claimed they're chasing the same goals right now. He confessed he used to be a member of the Union, but now he's a double agent and a spy for Team El Condor. The partners didn't expect that kind of truth from Wilhelm's loyal servant. Stiletto stated that Guardian and El Condor are way weaker than the other teams. Once there were fewer villains, all the heroes started focusing on their own personal ambitions. So, Stiletto agreed to infiltrate the Union and take out those teams from the inside. Juwon realized they were being offered an alliance right then and there. The three of them could join the Union and unleash hell. And this new ally was hinting they better trust him, because he could put Juwon's skills to good use. But if they don't team up, they'll just become rivals. And when they meet again, this guard promised to kill them all. Chrome wasn't impressed by his threats, but her buddy was getting worried. But he claimed he has Justice's powers and that he's only his double because he wants to find the killer. Stiletto liked the kid's fire. Maybe he'd get lucky and off the assassin himself. Guess the guy got tired of just spying and wants some real action. Juwon figures he'd make a solid ally, seeing as how he hates the bad guys so much. Now we just gotta see if the team is down with bringing him on board. Stiletto was stoked that Gradient was digging his plan. The guard checked Lee Juwon's ID. The kid showed up at the Union tryouts and they signed him up as a newbie. The ID check was super strict, but he made it through. He spent all last night faking that passport, real meticulous. But right now, he needs to size up the competition for the team. A lot of these guys act like they're freaking rock stars. And Juwon could tell these guys were nothing like the Guardians. You could see it on their faces. They were only in it for themselves. Suddenly, something caught the guy's eye. A familiar figure. It was Chrome, but she was dressed in regular clothes. For a second, Juwon was speechless. He told her she looked really pretty, but I think he pissed her off. Usually she's all scary in her black robes, but now she looks stylish. The girl told the kid to shut his mouth and follow her quietly. The hallway was packed with fans crowding around some blogger. Juwon realized the stranger was that streamer, Yum Yum. Right now, Yum Yum's the biggest mukbang streamer out there. She's probably here because of some serious channel promo, you know? The partner spotted Stiletto in the crowd and he waved them over. Even though Chrome didn't think hero popularity was a bad thing. I mean, you can use popularity points to vote within the team, right? In Union, it's not about skill or strength, just how appealing you are to the public. Looks like the partners are going to have some trouble building up a rep. Stiletto hinted that he had one way they could do it. In the lecture hall, the instructor told the students that all abilities are based on manifestation. Depending on how it manifests, the same ability can develop in different ways. But sometimes, when powers first kick in, things go down differently. A lot of times, people lose it completely and just fly into a rage. When that happens, they're basically out of their minds, but crazy strong. The instructor said heroes are always dealing with these rage monsters. Hearing they were going to hunt them freaked out the newbie crowd. The instructor was bummed all the brave guys were heading to Guardian or El Condor. Suddenly, a voice from the back broke the silence. Juwon announced his team wanted to give hunting rage monsters a shot. The guy was surprised, hadn't seen students like that in ages. Behind Juwon, a couple of girls were begging him not to risk his life. The kid got wary, but Stiletto gave him props for having guts. The ally was sure the hunt would be tough for a newbie, but with Justice's power, he could pull through. Only now did the doppelganger start thinking about the fallout. That evening, Chrome decided to show the guy Justice's special spot. Turns out it was a huge training hall, where Hayes sometimes hung out too. Juwon knew that beating Kaiser was a total fluke. And the fight with Dream got cut short because Arcadia butted in. The guy figured Stiletto was right about him being a weakling. He slightly transformed his arm, juicing it up with Justice's power. Suddenly, Ju-won flashed back to his 18th birthday. Sun's little sister was stoked to celebrate with him. The parents baked a killer cake, and the whole family was partying in the yard. But Big Bro had a surprise gift lined up for the kid. She'd been dying to meet Absolute, her hero, in real life for ages. So he'd been training his ass off to pull off this surprise. Sun watched his transformation, totally blown away. And when a spitting image of Absolute stood before her, she just burst out laughing. She ran up and hugged her idol, even though it was just her brother. The parents gave his performance a round of applause. But then, out of nowhere, a monster landed right on their bench. The kid and the little girl froze, totally horrified by their parents' deaths. Turns out that thing was a villain hunting down heroes. And Ju-won's transformation is what brought him to their door. The older brother shielded Sona, putting himself between her and the monster. Then he decided to fight the bad guy and save her, no matter what. But his attack was useless, and the monster just tossed the weakling aside. The brother slammed into the wall, his clone powers starting to fade. Before he blacked out, he yelled at his sister to run, to get out of the house. But the villain caught her right by the fence. The thing opened its razor-sharp jaws, and the sister's screams were the last thing Ju-won remembered. Years have passed, and now this kid's got superpowers, so he's gotta step up and be a real hero. He slammed into those training dummies full force, blasting them to dust. Chrome was surprised by the sudden outburst, but she didn't get in his way. Ju-won promised he'd do everything he could to master Justice's abilities. Somewhere in a basement, buried in the ruins of a deserted city, a local programmer was hustling, putting the finishing touches on some software. Then, out of nowhere, he gets a call from a secret contact. The guy was thrown for a loop when he heard guests were arriving in the hunting grounds. He headed over to the locked cells to check on the merchandise. The second he cracked open the door, the whole basement echoed with the roars of the crazed. Hacker just checked in. Says he's all set for tonight's party. He walked into the garage, eyeing that pack of hungry primal beasts, and promised the client that now was the perfect time to start the hunt. Ju-won's team arrived at the restricted sector outside the city. Chrome was worried the kid might have overdone it last night. But Stiletto joked they'd make it out alive since he had guardian protectors. And thanks to Chrome, they didn't even get stuck with a mentor. The guy said there'd be 4 of them, and someone suddenly tapped Ju-won on the shoulder. The little dude jumped a mile, startled, but it was just Yum Yum. Chrome pinned Stiletto to the wall, but he swore this would make them famous. I mean, they gotta keep their identities secret, and that streamer girl's a PR pro. The newbie overheard their secret and figured the whole group was a bunch of bloggers. And she confessed she's also super awkward about being popular with the fresh meat. Stiletto suggested splitting up into 2 teams and checking out the whole area. But he announced he's going on patrol with Chrome. And little Ju-won gets to protect Yam Yam while they're hunting. The guy hinted that a manifestation could happen today, so they better be ready. Chrome had to hide her face when Yam Yam started grilling her about what channel she runs. But Stiletto advised keeping an eye on the newbie, because she could help with the manifestation. Plus, Chrome can keep tabs on Stiletto if they still don't trust him. The girl was totally down to hang out with the blonde dude. They headed deeper into the ruins, but promised to stay in touch. Awkward silence settled between Ju-won and the streamer chick. So, the partners decided to take a walk down the main drag. The guy felt embarrassed being stuck in this dump with such a hottie. He was checking out her figure, and when she turned around, he suddenly demanded she tell him about her powers. But she was more curious about what kind of observation the team was talking about. Ju-won suddenly blurted out that Stiletto was new and just needed to watch how things were done. Yum Yum gave a sweet smile, pretending she bought what he was selling. Still, the dude was waiting for an answer about her superpowers. She straight up claimed she could eat as much as she wanted and it'd make her stronger. Ju-won was bummed. At this rate, they'd get wiped out at the next intersection. This streamer chick said she'd do an eating broadcast in a danger zone to get more followers. Thing is, she had no clue where her ability came from. She was just rolling with it. Stiletto must have been messing with him, suggesting he learn from the newbie. Munchie told the guy to figure things out himself, but he was totally lost. He was jealous that some cute girl was using her powers better than he could. Suddenly, the girl ducked behind the corner of a building. Peeking at the intersection, the guys spotted a huge-ass zombie. Ju-won realized their target still hadn't noticed they were being followed. Yam Yam started scarfing down every single chocolate bar in her bag like there was no tomorrow. The guy lost it like, seriously, this is not the time for a freaking snack break. He grabbed her hands, demanding she focus on the mission at hand. The noise from their fight actually got the monster's attention. and that thing charged toward the building at insane speed. Yamnyam bolted out into the street, fiery energy swirling around her. She leaped and was right on top of the monster's head, ready to deliver the blow. The monster smashed through the wall next door and got buried under a pile of rocks. Cute Yamnyam bragged that after a good meal, she can beat anyone. Juwon was stunned. Turns out she wasn't kidding about the food thing at all. Looks like the energy around her is burning extra calories and juicing her up for a fight. The girl laughed, saying this kind of workout really wakes you up. Bricks went flying when the monster finally snapped out of it. And the first thing he did was charge right back at the streamer. Juwon was freaking out when that fragile body got pinned by the creature. But she dodged it and used an energy shield to protect herself. She complained that the shield took a lot out of her and she needed more food. But first, she focused the last of her firepower into her fist and punched the enemy in the gut. You could see the monster was about to go into another rage. But then he jumped onto the building and disappeared across the rooftops. Yamnyam got all hyped up seeing her opponent bail on the fight. So she charged after him and told her partner to call for backup. Juwon pulled out his phone, but had no idea how to tell Stiletto everything. Suddenly, a clump of mud snatched the phone right out of his hand. And right in front of him, a weird silhouette started rising out of the sludge. The mud morphed into a real person. The hacker crushed the phone in his hand and promised his friends would never find the kid. Juwon realized it was a trap since the golem clearly knew how to think, not just growl. He could really use Chrome's help right now, but he couldn't call her without the phone. The guy tried to punch the enemy, but his hand was instantly covered in muck. But the villain suddenly appeared behind him and jammed a knife right into his gut.